The Bandsaw Life is proudly sponsored by Powermatic, Carter Products, and Typebond, the Pro's Advantage. All right, today we're going to show you how to tune up a tilt head Craftsman saw. Now, it's one of the older saws out there, and it's kind of unique. If you have one of these, I promise you, I have been through the same struggles that you have trying to get things adjusted, but we're going to try to make this as easy as possible. I'm going to use all the original guides, and then I'm going to show you a scroll guide. The thing that I love about this saw is the larger table, and it is an excellent scroll cutting saw, but it is for resawing. We'll show you how to make that work, but again, if you're stuck with those blocks, which they are steel blocks, they're going to create the friction and heat and destroy your blade pretty quickly. But again, want to go over all of that. So the first thing that we want to do is get that cover out of the way. And this one has the guides under the table, and you just simply lift up, pull out, and that's out of the way. Now, I want to show you how these guides work. I'm just going to pull that lower set out, and you'll notice that both sides are identical, and that's so that one comes in at a flat and the other comes in at that angle. If you get too much wear on one or the other, the nice thing about these is you just simply flip them around and use the opposite end. But all the guides are identical to this. We've got a thrust bearing that goes in here, slides front to back, and we've got our side guides that move with these. Now, these upper guides can be challenging to get to, so what I like to do is just loosen those two Phillips heads on the guard itself, and then the guard's out of the way. That way it's a little bit easier to adjust. And you can see this just a little bit clearer, that we've got our side guides there. We'll just slide that into place. We've got an Allen screw that tightens and loosens and holds that into place. Same thing on the bottom, the little Allen screw that holds it where it's supposed to be on the post. We'll push everything back out of the way. We'll open up those guides completely. I'll slide these back into place. And we'll install our 1/2-inch Carter blade. Now I'm using a 1/2-inch 4-tooth per inch blade. If I wanted to go through a little bit quicker, you could get a 3-tooth, but this 4 is probably about the max that this saw is really going to be able to handle. You can see it's challenging to get the blade on the bottom because there's not a whole lot of room to work in here. That's why one of these saws is so difficult to adjust. Since there's no insert, it does make it challenging to get the blade into place. Now we've got that blade on. Put just a little bit of tension on there. Now I like to set the tension, and I always like to make sure that I feel the tension on the left-hand side, generally because there are no guides or anything to give that blade resistance. But I like to try to get the exact same spot so that I get the same feel. So basically I want to check tension the same distance every time. So I use one of these grooves, just kind of check it at that point until we'll rotate that. We just want about 1/4 of an inch deflection, pushing on that blade lightly. There we go. Now I feel like we've got the right tension. All right, now we want to make sure that the deepest part of the gullet is right in the center of the wheel. And the way that we do that is with this slot head right in the middle. A lot of people think that's what holds the wheel on. This slot head, When you turn it to the left, it will bring the blade forward. When you turn it to the right, it will bring the blade back. Remember, very small increments because it moves very quickly. So we'll adjust this so that the deepest part of the gullet is right in the middle. And you can see just very small adjustments is all you need. So now I've got it set to where the deepest part of the gullet's in the center of the wheel. So since we can't get to all of these adjustments, I want to make sure that you know that the adjustment for this thrust bearing is on the right-hand side. You loosen up that Allen screw, and then you can adjust your thrust bearing front to back. This Allen screw over here is for your posts so that you can tighten it into place, both front and back, for your side guides. Then we've got our side guides, which we simply loosen, and you can see they slide and adjust. And just to pull one of those side guides off, you can see that they are slotted, so there's no real way to get those out of alignment. Now, since you can't see underneath the table, there's almost no way to get a shot of that. I'm going to show you the upper adjustment, which is identical to the lower. But we want to bring this forward so that our side guides are just behind the deepest part of the gullet. That way we don't take the set out of those teeth. So then we just, to lock that into place, there's an Allen wrench right here. Should say an Allen set screw. That you just simply tighten up. I believe one of the biggest challenges of this saw for anybody to adjust is knowing exactly where all these little adjustments are at. So we'll snug that up. Now we've got that into place. Now we need to adjust our thrust bearing so that it comes right up to the back edge of the blade, but when we rotate it, it does not turn. And the adjustment or the set screw to tighten that is over here on this side, and that sets the upper set. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the bottom. And this can really be challenging to get to, tightening this Allen screw up. And it is over here on the right hand side. And now we've got our side guides front to back set. And on the opposite side is for our thrust bearing. And again, you're going to have to use a real small wrench to get to it because it's very difficult to get anything large in there. So now we've got our thrust bearing set, we've got our side guides set. The last thing we need to do is adjust our side guides to the blade itself. And again, all we want is just, we can use our larger wrench here now. We just want a little bit of daylight between the blade and the guide. Remember, friction is the enemy of a bandsaw blade. Friction will destroy a bandsaw blade quicker than anything other than heat. And here's the other issue when you're adjusting these guides. Since the screw is in contact with the side guide itself, when you go to tighten it, it wants to move it to the right. So you've really got to hold that guide in place to keep it from moving when you tighten it up. We'll do the same thing underneath. Now we've got all of our guides set. Don't forget to put your guard back into place here. Took that off so that y'all could see what I was adjusting at the top. We'll just snug those two little Phillips heads back up. All right, now I'll give you a little secret. If you put the top cover on first, it's a little bit easier than putting the table into place. So we put that top cover on. Put our table in place. Now we want to make sure that our table is level. I know the table doesn't move, the head does, but we want to make sure that we're square to the blade itself. The way that we do that is a simple piece of 2x. We'll just turn our saw on, make a simple cut, flip the wood over, bring it around back. The blade will go into that cut. We know that we're square. You can see we're off just a little bit. So we simply pull that lever out and tilt the table and lock it back. Now I know I'm level across the whole surface to that blade. Very easy way of making sure that your table is square to the blade. Now, next, I don't have the original fence that went with this saw, and since we have an aluminum table, we can't use the Carter mag fence, so I'm going to use just a simple piece of maple here. I'm going to set it, but we want to make sure that we set this square to the body of the blade, front to back. So I'm going to use our FAST, which a FAST is a fence alignment system tool. You'll notice it has a groove for the offset of the teeth, a magnet for the body of the blade. It drops right onto that blade, teeth in the groove. Now I can line that fence up square to the body of the blade. Now let's say you wanted to get it a little bit further out. It's pretty easy to eyeball it when it's right next to it. But let's say we wanted to set it for 2 inches. Well, the FAST come in a set of 5, 1/8 through 1/2 inch. I would just simply measure over on the back, say 2 inches. I would measure the front over 2 inches. And now I know I'm square to the body of the blade and I'm 2 inches away. But we're just going to set this up to do a quick little resaw. So we'll bring that fence back over. Make sure it's in line with that FAST. And then I'll just put a clamp here. Clamp back here. Now we're ready to test our setup. All right, now I'm going to use just a little piece of cherry here, and we'll see how we did in our setup. Now, don't keep pushing. You could possibly catch your thumb. Always reach around back and pull that wood through. And I'd say our setup is just absolutely dead on. Now, Carter does not make guides for resawing for this saw, but they do make one other guide that I want to show you, which is for scroll cutting, and that's where I think this saw really shines. Thanks for watching. See you again next time.